My ex-boyfriend said no one would ever love me. I'm getting married to his best friend. I was crying on a bathroom floor when I heard those words. Not dramatic movie crying, but the silent, broken kind, where your whole body shakes and no sound comes out. No one's ever going to love you the way I do, Evan said from the other side of the door. And honestly, no one's going to love you at all. You're too much. You're too emotional, too needy, too broken. I'm the only one who could ever tolerate you. I was 26 years old, and I believed him. We'd been together for 4 years. He'd systematically convinced me that my feelings were pathological, that my needs were unreasonable, that my very existence was a burden. And somehow, hearing him say those specific words, that no one would ever love me, felt like the final truth I'd been waiting for all along. I left him that night, but I didn't leave because I'd suddenly found confidence. I left because I was drowning, and I couldn't drown with an audience. The first 6 months after the breakup were about survival. I went to therapy, I started writing down the things he'd said and analyzing them like crime scenes. I realized that he'd been systematically dismantling my self-worth for 4 years, and I'd been complicit in my own destruction. I also realized I had no idea who I was without him. During this time, I reconnected with old friends. One of them was Julian, Evan's best friend from college. They'd had a falling out years earlier, and I'd always liked Julian, but never thought of him romantically. He was just there, kind in the background. The type of person who remembered everyone's coffee order and asked meaningful questions. Julian started inviting me to group events, not as part of some master plan, but just as a friend who'd noticed I was isolated and wanted to help me rebuild my community. He never mentioned Evan. He never said anything negative about him. He just showed up consistently, with no expectation of anything in return. After about a year, I started to see him differently. It wasn't love at first sight. It was slower than that. It was the kind of thing that grows in the soil of genuine respect and consistent presence. It was the moment I realized that when I spoke, he actually listened, that he asked follow-up questions because he cared, not because he was performing care. But I was terrified. I remember the day I told him about what Evan had said. We were sitting in his apartment, and I was being vulnerable in a way I hadn't been since the breakup. I told him the specific words, "No one will ever love you." Julian looked at me for a long moment, then he said something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. He was wrong about everything, but he was especially wrong about that. "How do you know?" I asked. "Because I love you. I've been loving you since you smiled at that terrible joke I made last year. I've been loving you through every moment of your healing, and I'm going to keep loving you whether you ever love me back or not." I cried then, but they were different tears. We took things slowly. I needed time to make sure I wasn't replacing one unhealthy dynamic with another. But as months passed, I realized this was different. Julian celebrated my independence instead of resenting it. He encouraged my dreams instead of belittling them. He made space for my emotions without making me feel broken for having them. And here's the beautiful part. I learned to love myself somewhere in the middle of his loving me. They happened simultaneously. I started therapy not to heal from my past, but to understand myself better. I reconnected with my ambitions. I rebuilt friendships that Evan had isolated me from. When Julian proposed, on the beach at sunset, completely unprometically, just because he couldn't wait another day, I said yes without hesitation. I ran into Evan at the grocery store the week after we got engaged. I was wearing the ring, and he saw it immediately. I watched his face cycle through emotions, confusion, anger, disbelief. "Julian?" he asked, like the universe had made some kind of mistake. "Yes," I said simply. He looked like he wanted to say something cutting, something to diminish what I'd found, but I didn't wait to hear it. I just smiled and walked away, because I finally understood something. The opinion of someone who tried to convince me I was unlovable means nothing. It's just the noise of someone scared by their own capacity for cruelty. The beautiful part of this story isn't that I got revenge by marrying his best friend. It's that I proved to myself that he was wrong, that I was lovable, that I deserved someone who shows up consistently, who believes in me without condition, who loves me not despite my emotions, but because of my capacity to feel deeply. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't marrying anyone. It's learning that you are always worthy of love, from others, and most importantly, from yourself.